What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Street Parking Podcast. Today, I have a guest, and she's not here with me in person, which is something that I don't do very often. As a matter of fact, I was just trying to remember if I've ever done a Zoomy interview, because usually we have people here with us if we're doing interviews. So this might be a first, and if it is a first, it is because it is super important and super special, and somebody that we could not wait to get them out here. So we had to do it over the StreamYard or over the Zoom. And it is a Street Parking member, but also someone who is very well known in the CrossFit community for her work with larger body athletes, Athena Perez. Hello.
Hello.
And I'm going to be super dramatic. And before me just asking you, who are you and how are you doing and everything, and all those pleasantries that we've already done, honestly, before we started recording, I'm just going to dive right into it because I want people to be right away gripped by this episode, as I have been gripped by you. But in researching for all of this, there's just so much. You have put out so much good stuff. So I'm just going to read something that I took from, I believe this was an article that was originally published in the Morning Chalk Up and is now moved over to Barbend. But I took this straight from your Instagram account, actually. It says about Athena. Okay, guys, so here's who she is. The tip of the iceberg, of course. With a health journey that began at close to 500 pounds, Athena Perez's first steps into a CrossFit gym were taken with the aid of 2 canes. Her sole ambition was to regain the ability to walk unassisted. The thought of achieving anything beyond that seemed unfathomable. And then just a little bit more about you, and then I'm going to dive into some of this stuff. Athena Perez, also known as Bean, is known for her straightforward honesty, transparency, and unwavering dedication to advocating for larger-bodied athletes. Ever since her story aired on CrossFit in 2018, she's made a huge impact on the community. Athena is a CrossFit Level 2, working on her Level 3, but also owns Scaled Nation Training, home to Scaled Nation CrossFit and the CrossFit CEU approved course, Working with Larger Bodies, which I have attended here in Portland. And several of our coaches were there as well. This course highlights her commitment to health and empowers athletes of all sizes, along with their support networks, coaches, trainers, family, and friends. On her own health journey, which continues, as it does for all of us until we die, Athena has lost over 225 pounds, showing her dedication and consistency. She's also a published author. Her book, Lifting the Weight, gained recognition on Good Morning America, and she's got sequels in the works. Athena's story is a testament to the power of perseverance and community.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just pulled this all from your stuff, but it's all so true. And I want to dive into how it is all so true. And it sounds, to someone listening, maybe especially a larger bodied athlete or somebody with obesity, might be like, I can't relate to this person. And maybe you feel that people from your community of the larger bodied athletes might say that to you sometimes, well, you're different than me, you're wired different or something. So I want to dive into that. And these are all of your accomplishments, and this is what people might see, but you try to also do a really good job of showing the less impressive or less polished side of all of it, which is what I try to do too.
Yeah.
And do you remember, so first of all, people are like, well, I didn't know Athena was friends with or working with Miranda. You had posted about it.
Yeah.
And I noticed when I was on your website today that I'm on there a few times for the seminar when you were here. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time we ever actually met?
I think so. Yeah. It was at the BSI event.
It was at Broken Science, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For me, it was one of those weird things where I had to recall, have I met her actually in person? Do you ever get that? Where you are I know this person, but I can't remember if I've actually ever met them yet.
I felt the same way when I met you. I'm like, I feel like I've met her before, but no, I think it was just all your stuff that I'd seen online.
Yeah, same. So we met there, and I talked to you a little bit about street parking and what we're trying to do, and how we have this large community of athletes who, many of them are larger bodied athletes who are uncomfortable or not lack the confidence or whatever you want to call it to go into a physical gym. So they like street parking because it's like, well, if I don't want anybody to watch me working out. And I kind of wanted to pick your brain about like if we were doing a good job, because your whole thing is making sure that people know how to modify or customize movements so that larger bodied athletes can participate in CrossFit workouts. So that's kind of how we first connected. And where we are now is next to my little notes over here and how that has progressed. I personally, I'll share from my side, and then I've talked way too much already, but I feel with you, and it might seem like this friendship that maybe doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but I feel like you are a kindred spirit, that we have so much in common in the way that we think and what we're trying to accomplish in fitness with helping people. I felt right away with you, almost like, oh, this person and I are on the same wavelength.
Agreed. And I don't know how or why it did feel that way from the minute that we met in person at the seminar.
Yeah. And then I felt like even just watching you, because we didn't interact a ton. We would interact here and there, and I would comment on your stuff, or we would DM a little bit or this and that. I felt right away that you were almost like an ally with me. I felt a friendship, like where we would just get each other. It was very strange. And so that's kind of how our relationship has been. And then you reached out to me when, I don't even remember when that conversation.
It was March.
Okay.
In March is when I said, hey, odd question, but are you willing to be like my movement coach?
That's right. Okay. So and I'm going to get into like your journey and all of that. So I don't want to gloss over any of that. But since you reached out to me in March, and I was in a very challenging personal spot where I had to tell you like, hey, for the next month, I'm going to be pretty much unreachable. And I also wanted to make sure that I could uphold what you needed, that I was going to be available. I didn't want to let you down and all of this. And you patiently waited for me. And since, I guess, late April, early May, right? We've been doing where you have been following the street parking programming, and we've been customizing it to be right for you and where you're at with your fitness. And I've had a really good time with it. And I hope you're having a good time too.
It's the best, actually. I could talk all day about my fondness for street parking. I wasn't sure about it when I first started, because I just didn't know what it was. But I love the versatility of it. There's days where I'm not always feeling level A, and but there's endless tracks, there's endless programs, there's everything in there.
Yeah. And so, okay. So, but your introduction to street parking, actually, I should rewind, is starting in January, you were doing the vault. So you did the whole first half of the vault also.
That's right. So I was just doing the vault. So you had put out this thing for affiliates, and you're like, hey, any affiliate can do this. And I was like, wow. And then, of course, we get all the stuff for the affiliate, and it was once a week. And I was like, this is easy for me to talk people into it, because we're really only saying, just if you do anything, do it once a week. And I was like, this is an easy sell. One workout a week. And so I was like, okay, there's a lot of people in like Scaled Nation community where talking them into joining a box or an affiliate or even doing it every day, that's a tough sell, but once a week I can do that. And so I was totally pumped. And I think one of the reasons that I loved it so much is because those workouts, most of them don't need a ton of equipment. And every week this happens to me where I'll look at it and I'm like, well, this doesn't look so bad until I do it. And then I'm like, every single time it's deceptive. They're challenging, they're hard, that they look like, oh yeah, that looks super simple. Definitely not.
Yeah, I feel like you say that about, I mean, we were just talking about your workout that you did today, which was not a vault.
All of them.
You said the same thing.
All of them are like that. I'm like, some of them, I'm like, yeah, I got this one in the bag. And then 6 minutes in, I'm like, did not have that in the bag.
Okay, so in this episode, we're going to talk about first, we're going to talk about what Scaled Nation is and what you do as a coach and all of that. And then I want to get into your personal journey because they're heavily tied together, but they're kind of not two different stories, but I want to hit on both of those things. So you share a lot about your personal weight loss journey and how it's continued and how it's had its ebbs and flows or highs and lows, as our fitness journey does for most of us, or all of us. If you're consistent for your whole life, that's just part of it. And so kind of where you're at now and what we're doing now and what you've been focusing on since January. But first I want to talk about Scaled Nation and what it is. And so I'm going to read again. This is from your website, and then we can dive into it. And you can tell us a little bit more about how this came to be and what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So this is straight from your website. We know larger bodies. In fact, we wrote the course on it. I mentioned before that myself, I think Coach DH, Coach Chelsea, and Coach Alex, we all attended the larger body athlete course. It was last year, I think.
Yeah, March of last year. Yeah.
Okay. And it was just awesome. It was just, they came here in Portland and we all went, and it was really great. And helped us with making sure that we were doing a good job with our customizations and really thinking about how to answer people's questions in the Facebook group and all of that. So we are Scaled Nation Training, and we know there's a better way to improve the lives of athletes living with obesity. And we do that by empowering their coaches, family, friends through tools, education, and advocacy. And so you wrote in here about how in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, you were launching this super cool in-person and online CrossFit affiliate, but you wanted to shake things up, and you did something really smart, even just from like a business perspective, because general fitness, even CrossFit, who it is designed to be for everyone, there's so much out there. And you said, well, I want to help people like me. And so you chose a very specific demographic, and that demographic was people living with obesity. So what were you doing before that? And how did this whole Scaled Nation thing come to be?
What was I doing before that? I've been a project manager my whole life. I mean, I've been involved in CrossFit since 17, and I coached, but didn't really think about like opening up an affiliate. I never thought that was going to be part of my path. It was kind of an accident. It was a happy accident, I call it, as a lot of affiliates start, right? The reason it came kind of in the middle of the pandemic was because honestly, I was pissed off that I didn't have a place to go or work out. And it was like, well, I'm just going to open up my own affiliate. And the way that the laws are structured here in Minnesota is that as long as it's attached to my house, it's not governed by the same authority. So I was like, that's the kind of gym I need to open. So we're going to do it right out there, make it like a formal affiliate, get the affiliate license and all that kind of stuff, and go for it. So that's what I did. And initially, what's on there is correct. You know, the idea was like, I knew that I wanted to be different from the very beginning, because although we say, yes, this is for everyone, it can be for everyone, but for some, it's just going to look a little bit different, and movement has to be different. So I was like, I'm going to cater to just this demographic and kind of serve as a, like a bridge. So the idea is that people would come into Scaled Nation. I want to get them comfortable with community, because a lot of people, especially that are like severe obese, they're hundreds of pounds overweight. You know, a lot of them are isolated. You know, they don't get out much. It's hard to move around. And I was like, this is a big jump for somebody. So I was like, what if I give them the space where that they can come in, they can get used to being around other people that look just like them,
Mm-hmm.
get used to community, they can get used to the movements, they can learn the things that we learn in CrossFit. And then when they're ready, transition them to a box closer to them. Because we would have people coming all the way down from Duluth, which is like 2 hours north, that would drive down the 2 to 3 times a week just to work out at Scaled Nation because it was a place they felt safe, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So you made your garage an affiliate.
Yeah.
And having larger body athletes come to you from all over, I mean, within driving distance.
Yeah.
And how many people per week were you seeing? Were you running classes? Were you doing just like, hey, once a week, anybody who wants to come? Like how was it structured at first?
So we were structured online and in person. So that little affiliate out there is all of 400 square feet, and we were running 48 athletes. We had 48 athletes.
Okay, cool.
So that was like our maximum capacity because we could only have like 3 or 4 people at a time.
Yeah, of course.
I say we like there's a mouse in my pocket.
Your staff at the time.
My staff, Kodiak and Bobby.
You and your 3 other personalities in your head. That's the
yeah. So we did the online thing for a while, and I think, when COVID was over, I think people were tired of like the Zoom. They wanted to be in person. So that started transitioning early on. But what happened was when I started working with these athletes in person, and that's all I was working with, it unintentionally, accidentally became the sandbox for what would become the seminar.
Mm-hmm.
And that became such a passion of mine that it transitioned out of, your standard affiliate to where 100% of the efforts out there were dedicated to the seminar.
And you know what I love is that, I think that is most valuable, and maybe people can frown upon it or think that this isn't how it should be. But what I have found, so your seminar was built and based on real person experience, both with your own body, like, hey, I've tried to do these workouts and this is how I've had to like figure it out. And also these 48 athletes that you've worked with, where I think people tend to want to be like, well, she doesn't have a bachelor's in this or a master's in that or this and that, right? And it's like, well, shouldn't she have gone to all this schooling or this and that? And they want all the letters by your name. And we see people a lot of times with all the letters, and they've never actually helped another human being, whether an average sized person or a larger bodied athlete. But they have this idea of what this should work based on the book that I read or whatever. They don't actually have experience working with bodies of all different sizes or minds of people with all different things going on. And what I really loved about the seminar, and we'll get into like where you're at with the seminar and stuff, is you go into like the trauma tree and like all of this stuff, because it's one thing to even understand how the body works, but if you don't understand what's going on in the mind of a lot of, whether it's, this could be of any demographic, you work specifically with larger bodied athletes, but that could be what's going on in the mind of someone when they're pregnant or when they're overcoming an injury, or somebody that, whatever, like we all have our stuff. And I've always understood that as a coach or a trainer, you're a therapist almost as much as you are a movement coach. And where we never say like that you should actually try to perform therapy with someone and do that job. There is a part of that job that where it just kind of comes with the territory. The more you can understand people, the more useful you can be as their coach, because you understand their fears or their inability, or you will talk later about how people struggle with accountability. But you have to understand that before you can even get them in the door and get them to buy in and listen to you.
That's like, that's why we set it up like a tree. Like there's more veins to this than I think people realize. And I think it's easily brushed off as, oh, well, you know, they're just making excuses. We're not talking about excuses. We're talking about like real life reasons people do what they do. And if you don't understand why people do what they do, you're not going to be able to help them. It's not going to matter what you say to them. And this is why, you know, like sometimes they'll come back with, well, you don't understand. It's because in a lot of cases you don't.
And the beliefs that people have about themselves that are so deeply like one could be, and we'll talk about I love your box jump series of stories, but like one could be like, I can't jump, I cannot, like that is like, I hold that to be true, like the sky is blue, or I can't squat, or I can't exercise, or I can't be athletic, or, you know, and people hold on to that as a hardcore truth that could never be changed. And you have to be able to work with people to overcome those beliefs just as much as the physical inability.
Well, yes. And that's why, like, there's words that I caution people from using, because when we call people these things, they're adopting it as their identity. And once that happens, damned if that's going to be the struggle of somebody's life, is to get out of something they've always been called and something they've adopted as their identity. They don't see themselves any differently. That's part of the problem.
And do you believe that it becomes like almost like a safety?
Yeah.
Where if I'll use the jumping one, for example, because you've shared so much about your box jump stuff. But if I just believe that I can't jump, I can take it out of the realm of things that I ever need to consider whether I should try. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, that's just out for me. So I'm off the hook for ever even thinking about it ever again, and it's gone. Do you feel that people, it can also become like a safety bubble that gets smaller and smaller? I think as for all of us, as we age, that can tend to happen.
I would say, like, that's with most things, right? Like 100%, that mindset piece when I say their mindset piece, we're talking about what we think, how we think, our identity, our safety, things that scare us, things that make us feel comfortable. It's a whole ball.
What are I'll share some of mine, because the other thing that I was really excited about this episode is I think that there are differences in the different demographics where yes, I competed as like for me, it's still weird, like a professional athlete level. And that's never been your story or your life, or maybe, I've been this trainer and all of this for 2 decades. And people might think, well, there's no commonality in how these two view themselves or fitness or whatever, because they're so different. And I just would love to challenge people on that. That's not true, that everybody has their stuff. And unfortunately, people don't tend to share the things that they struggle with. They love to share the things that they are not struggling with, or they just flat out fake it.
True again.
So what have been some of your beliefs that you've had to overcome because you walked into the CrossFit gym for the first time with 2 canes, and now you're box jumping and you're lunging and all of this stuff. So what are some of the beliefs just off the top of your mind that you've had to overcome?
Oh, well, I mean, the first one, when I walked in there, being on the canes and on the walker, the doctors told me that I wouldn't be able to do those movements. So because it came from a medical professional, I was like, well, they know, so it must be true.
Yeah.
So I had resigned myself that I was like, well, I'm never going to be able to do all those things. The doctor said I wouldn't be able to. The other thing that kind of comes to mind is, and this is going to sound really dumb, and I don't think I've ever articulated it before ever, but there was a real fear of being smaller. So it surfaced, I'd say, the first time that I lost a bunch of weight. This was like back in my 20s. And I had gotten down to like the lightest in my life. And all of a sudden, People were nicer. Guys were holding doors open for me, and they were, like they would whistle at me or something stupid like that. And it, again, sounds silly, but it made me really uncomfortable. But it also made
Mm.
me like resentful. If that makes any sense at all. Because in my mind, I was like, well, I'm the same person that I was 6 months ago. And again, I wasn't sure enough to understand the difference at the time, but it's a fear. It still is. I wouldn't say it's like I'm afraid type of fear. It's just, you don't know what you've never been. I don't know what that feels like. I've never been small before.
Well, like you said before, whether you consciously love who you are or not. It's like the devil we know versus the devil we don't know.
Correct. It's like I'm comfortable. I got comfortable in my body because I knew my body there. I know what it's like, like some people call it a security blanket. And I think that that's a really good analogy because that's kind of what it is, like I know in the wintertime, I'm not going to need extra sweaters here in Minnesota because I have lots of, that's just kind of how I lived. And, yes, I'd say that your analogy is really good. It's more comfortable with what you know versus not knowing.
Yeah,
and some
it's
people
like, well,
look at you crazy, like, well, why would you want to stay heavier? Because it's what I know.
That's like, I know this version of myself. And do you think that there's a part of it too, where it's like, well, if I stay heavier and I just stay the same, then I don't feel like if I lose all the weight and I'm unable to keep it off, there's like a failure element or like a shame where people see that I did it, but then I, fell out of it. Do you think that that's part of it?
I think pressure is a part of it. This is something that surfaces with a lot of people that lose weight. I was definitely part of this group as well. And that you do change. You change because, one, you start gaining more self-confidence. I think you learn a lot about yourself through any kind of journey like this, but that surfaces. But it's going to surface most of the people that are closest to you, your family, your friends. And all of a sudden your friends are like, well, you're acting different. You act different than you were before. They know you as this person, this one that lacks self-confidence, doesn't stand up for herself, says yes to everything. That's the friend that they like. And then all of a sudden, this new person is emerging. This new person is being born. They don't like that because that's not the person they knew. It's not the person they know,
Yeah. And I think what that does, because I've done a lot of therapy myself, as you know, for the past year, especially. And one of the things that they talk about is when you change, when you gain self-confidence or self-esteem or start having boundaries or whatever it is, it's a mirror for other people. And they're like, well, now I can see how undisciplined I am, or I can see how she's made all these changes in her life. And now it's making me feel kind of shitty that I haven't made changes in my life. And I don't like how that's making me feel. So if she could just go back to not doing that, I could feel better that I'm not doing that. And that happens whether it's weight loss or you stop drinking or you go to bed, or like it could be anything. But it's a mirror that's held up of like, hey, look at what I'm doing to improve my life and the discipline that I brought in my life and how it's improving my life. Where people around you, they start to feel their own like shame about what they're maybe not doing or wish they could do.
I just posted this video yesterday. It was very timely that this came up. Mel Robbins, she did this video and she was using this example of her husband when her husband quit drinking, but she said something really profound in it. And she said, when people change, you're not inspiring people, you're confronting people.
Mm-hmm.
And so like they're having to deal with like their issues around a certain topic, like when I lost one of my closest friends, when I started losing weight, and we had been friends for over 20 years and she bailed. She didn't want to be my friend anymore. Looking back now, I can say, well, it had everything to do with the fact that I was ready and she wasn't. And it upset her, understandably so. that's what it
Yeah, because
is.
we've all been on both sides of that. Like nobody can say that they've only been on the like I'm the on the up and up and people just don't get it. We've all also looked at somebody in our life. It could be a spouse, a sibling, whatever, and you're just like, this person is on a growth journey in their life that is making me realize how not on a growth journey I am. We've all been on both sides of it, and I think that we can understand it. And if we can view it as that and understand what's actually happening within us, that you weren't losing weight to hurt your friend. Like you weren't, but we all tend to take everything so personally and think it's a personal attack and we don't like this and I'm losing my friend and she doesn't want to go do some of the things that we used to do, or she's too busy
Right.
working or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so staying on, because we'll get more into that. I love that conversation though. And what I was going to share is everybody has those things. So yours were the doctor, which I think is such an unfortunate thing. And I have very strong feelings that I've shared about medical professionals and their lack of understanding of fitness and nutrition, but we won't, that's a whole separate podcast
on that topic.
Yeah, that's a whole separate podcast, but because I've been told you'll never be able to, or you can't, you know, because I've had some pretty serious injuries with my neck and my knee and that kind of stuff. So I have, or through my pregnancies, the things that they tell you should or shouldn't do or can't do. And so that's a whole thing. So you had doctors telling you can't. Oh, before we move on, since the doctors were telling you you're not going to be able to do this, why did you even go in the first place?
I think there's probably a little bit of like, you're not going to tell me what I can or can't do going on there. I'm sure there was some of that, but also I couldn't accept the fact that I was going to be in a wheelchair. Like that was it for me. Like I couldn't imagine myself being stuck in a wheelchair, and I was very, very close to it. I was already in a walker, you know, like I live in a house with stairs, you know, like, I have to be able to move around my house. So I think that's why the goal was, I wasn't thinking beyond that when I started CrossFit, because one, I don't even think it was possible I could have imagined anything else. Remember being like, that was part of my identity. I'm not going to be able to do all these things. But I did think, well, maybe I could just walk. And that would have been okay at the time.
And how far into your journey did that become a reality where you were walking without the canes?
A month.
Wow. And that's the thing too, is it's like, again, we're talking about your story and about people living with obesity and the things that they're also being told, you're not going to be able to do this, you're not going to be able to do that. This is just going to be your life now. You're going to be in a wheelchair, whatever. But all of us have our beliefs, like I mentioned. And what I think is just so beautiful is that instead of just surrendering to the fact that this is my life and I'm going to be in a wheelchair, you were like, but what if I just go try? Like, what's the worst that could happen? I end up in a wheelchair anyway, you know? And so many of us just won't put ourselves out there to find out. And your whole life is like completely different because of that one moment of, well, let me just go test this theory of whether the doctors are right or if they're wrong, and what's the worst that could happen. And I think so many of us get stuck in that spot of that belief that we don't find out if it's actually true. We never go actually test it.
I think some of this has to do with, you know, like we're taught from a very young age, you know, like a doctor, for instance, if a doctor tells you something, you have every reason to believe that what they're telling you is factual and truthful. When 2 weeks before I called this trainer that happened to work at this CrossFit gym, this was back in 17. When I called my doctor team to tell them that I wasn't going to have bariatric surgery, they lost their mind. You know, you're never going to be able to do this on your own. You know, like you're going to die. Like they were trying to talk me out of that decision, trying to make me believe that that was the only path. You know, like we are trained from birth that these are the specialists. This is
Mhm.
why they go to medical school, because they know, they must know.
Mhm.
So when somebody like that says, hey, you shouldn't do this, you're not going to be able to do this, I think it's reasonable why people get stuck,
Yeah.
because they must know.
And the truth is that I'm not completely in the camp of like we should never listen to doctors or anything. Like they our medical community and all of that, that's so important. They save lives all the time. There are amazing doctors out there and everything, but at the end of the day, like, it's your body, you need to take ownership. And for me, the biggest thing is what I feel that we're missing, whether it's you want to talk about it in our education system or wherever, none of us know how our bodies actually work. We're not comfortable making decisions for ourselves. We don't know enough to even like ask the right questions in a doctor's appointment or anything like that. And I mean, you're talking to, again, this is like why we're kindred spirits. You're talking to the mom that did 3 home births and, because, same thing. And one of the things that I think is so important for us is like, hey, we learn all of this stuff in school that we never use, and we never learn how to even advocate for ourselves or how our bodies work, or why certain foods impact us a certain way, or why movement's so like that stuff is never taught. And it's on us to be, the spokesperson for ourselves and know as much about our bodies as possible, so that when we go to these professionals, we at least can have the ability to ask the proper questions. And I think most people just lack that. And they just blindly trust doctors because that's such a part of our culture.
It is. But I also think that there isn't a part of medical culture that really instills the value of, that person is the authority on their body.
Mm-hmm.
When they say this, it's probably true.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go back to talk a little bit more about Scaled Nation and where it is now. So I took this from your website also. It says, here we are 3 years later. So this was written last year, obviously. And Scaled Nation has developed into an educational and training company. Our first course, with more to come, has been launched with overwhelming support by the community. It's called Working with Larger Bodies, and it was designed to help coaches serve their members that other gyms might not be able to or simply won't. And, I think one of the things that you talk about in that seminar is there's the side of the athlete that's afraid to go in because they don't want people looking at them. They don't want to go in and fail or not be able to do it. And then they feel embarrassed or whatever. But then there's the coaches who are like, I don't know what to do with this person.
Yep.
And I've never worked with somebody that's this size, and things come up that you're like, I had never thought about this before. And one of the things that was super impactful for me at your seminar was when you were like, do you know what the weight limit is on the Concept 2 rower or on the assault bike or on this plyo box or whatever? And I would venture to guess that most of the people that come to your seminar, which are the tip of the spear of people who actually care because they're there,
Yeah.
they don't even know, and they had never even thought about it before.
Yeah. Something very simple like that. And we get asked a lot, like, well, if the weight limit doesn't technically matter and we don't focus on somebody's weight, we don't want to ask somebody's weight, why even bother going over that in the seminar? And it has more to do with larger bodies will self-evaluate. Looking up weight limits on the equipment is usually one of the first things they do. They know more than you do. They already know what the weight limit on the bike is. They already know what the weight limit on the rower is, because most of us will look it up, especially anybody that's ever had a weight problem. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they opt out of something like, I don't want to get on the rower or bike, sometimes that can be seen from the coaches as, they don't want to do it. They're unwilling. They get labeled. They don't want to do it. They're unwilling. But sometimes it has nothing to do with what you think it does. It's not that they don't want to try. What they're not willing to do is get on it and break it, is what they're trying to tell you.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things too, and this is not the same, but I worked a lot with some athletes that were in like the adaptive athletes. So I had a client for a long time who was a paraplegic.
Okay.
And you get this, we became really close friends and we became really good friends. And I got to the point where he would say, I can't do that. And I'd be like, I think you can though. And this is not with the weight limit thing that makes sense. We're not going to put you on a machine, but a lot of times it's being comfortable as a coach and confident and knowing what your motives are to ask and not make assumptions. So somebody might look at a larger bodied athlete and be like, well, this person can't do burpees. Like, not even going to mention that. And it's like, well, why don't you say, hey, have you ever done a burpee before? We see you try one, and one larger bodied athlete might crush it. And you're just like, oh my gosh, that went way better than I expected it to. And another one might be unable to. And I think assumptions are, it's like the saying, like an assumption makes an ass out of you and me, or whatever the saying is. But I think there's assumptions that come from both sides too.
There is.
And that with any relationship, that causes a complete breakdown of communication, and people are both feeling just very uncomfortable, as opposed to saying, hey, can I get you to try this? Or it feels uncomfortable. Well, can you tell me why? What part of it feels uncomfortable? And I think people are so afraid of offending people these days that they won't even ask.
It makes sense. Right.
Yes.
I mean, it's understandable why. But I think where we get into trouble is the assumptions part of it. When we're making statements, I think people generally appreciate when we ask questions. If we pose it as a question, or we preface everything that we ask them like, hey, I'm asking these questions because I don't know and I care. So will you be willing to tell me? These conversations are so easy to have. You're not going to offend somebody by asking them questions.
And they're coming to you for that guidance.
Right, exactly.
How much worse is it? And I'll just keep the burpee. Let's say that the person's in your class, for example. We're talking a lot about classes and coaching and everything, which might not feel like makes sense to you guys because street parking is all online. But it applies because we want people in our community, we want people to see a burpee and think, I don't know if I can do a burpee. Let me try and see. Mm-hmm. And that's what us working together has been so awesome, because, I'll say, well, can you try doing this? And just like, let me know how it goes. And with no need to feel embarrassed or anything, if that's not going to work. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
But how much worse would it be to, as a coach, assume that somebody couldn't do a burpee, for example, and you've got the whole class doing burpees except for this one person, when the person in their mind is like, I don't know why they're not having me do burpees. Like, I could definitely do a burpee. How much worse is that than asking?
This is like actually one of the hundreds of reasons why the seminar exists in the first place, because unfortunately, there's a lot of people that disagree with me, but they're like, oh, Athena, that's such a rarity. It's actually not. It happens all the time. And we're not just talking about assumptions from coaches. It's not just them. It's assumptions from the athletes too. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they don't share what they should be sharing so that somebody can help them. So we always say the responsibility is on both, but they're looking for that guidance. They're looking for that coaching, and we're not going to get anywhere if we're not comfortable asking simple, basic questions. But I think it happens with larger bodies more. There's this assumption of all the things that they cannot do, where I think it would surprise a lot of coaches, like they can think.
I feel that way with you when you're box jumping and lunging and running and all of this, because I think society or whatever, you tend to assume that everybody who looks a certain way has the same physical ability. And that could be somebody who looks really, really fit. You just assume that person's going to be able to crush kipping pull-ups and push-ups. And that's not true at all.
Right. It's not. Yeah. Yeah. It's not exclusive to larger bodies. Like, assumptions go around the board.
Mm-hmm. And so you're automatically like, oh yeah, this person's going to do the workout as prescribed. And it's like, just because somebody looks a certain way does not mean that they're ready for that. And I used to see that all the time at the level ones, where we would, people would come in looking very, very fit. And then when it came to do Fran at the end of the day, it was like, oh shoot, I got to strip this person's weight and like get them a band for these pull-ups because clearly they gained their physique in another way. And I shouldn't have made that assumption just based off of the way that they look. And the same thing with any demographic, but the larger bodies can perform and move very, very differently and look very, very similar on the outside. And I think we tend to assign personalities or to every demographic group as well. We assume this person's going to be easily offended. We assume this person isn't going to want to work hard or isn't going to want to be pushed. And that might be true for some of them, for some of the larger body athletes, but
it could be true for anybody.
It could be true for anybody. So it could be true for the person that walks in looking super jacked, where again, I've seen that over and over where they get beat by a couple of the women in class and then you never see them again because they feel so bad about it afterwards that they don't want to work that hard and also be, feeling their ego being kicked down.
I was like, I've had my fair share of watching, very svelte looking athletes get butt hurt because somebody beat them in a workout. And then, then you don't see them. Mm-hmm. It happened just as easily the other way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think just being very careful, and I loved your seminar for that, for not assigning a movement ability or a personality or a work ethic to, and it applies to you talk specifically about the larger body demographic, but it really does apply to anyone. Mm-hmm. And we really see that in street parking, and we try to give the options and then guidance around pushing yourself because, okay, so you work out, and we're going to get into your story here in just a second. You work out alone. Is that correct?
I do now, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How long have you been doing that for?
Maybe a little over a year and a half.
Okay, so like 6 months before you started doing the vault and all of that stuff. And that's a challenge on its own. And you and I have talked about that. And ultimately that's why you reached out for coaching, because we can find our little comfort zones. Mm-hmm. And we can say, well, this is how I always have done burpees, or these are movements that I tend to swap out for each other. And having somebody say, well, can you do like the first 2 burpees to the ground and then do the elevated ones for the rest of the reps? Like these are the things that we talk about, right?
That's so true.
And because working out at home brings a comfort zone. And so maybe it does get someone moving who's not comfortable being watched or being, in a class with other people or losing or not, taking to. And so it's awesome for getting people moving, but it's also dangerous for keeping them from challenging themselves in a way.
1000%.
So I'm going to get into your personal journey now a little bit, and we'll talk more about like that all was about Scaled Nation. And that was just like the tip of the iceberg of what she does at her seminar. And definitely look into it. I don't think that it's just for coaches. I think that it's for anyone, even if it's like you work out with your friends and your neighbors and you want to be able to, if somebody is larger body, ends up working out at a meetup with you or in your garage, or it's your mother-in-law, whatever, where you feel more comfortable. And it also, again, talks so much about just understanding people and our minds and how it's all connected. So, but I do want to get into your personal journey a little bit. And I feel like we could do like a full Joe Rogan, like 4-hour podcast. I pulled some quotes because you're such a good writer, and you share so much and you're so open and vulnerable on social media. This I pulled from a Instagram post that was earlier this year. And I wanted to start out your personal journey with this. Maybe if I hide behind my hoodies, people won't notice my roles or take shots at me because I'm also a coach. I'm a CrossFit coach dedicated to helping people who have obesity. So I guess I'm just going to have to show the process the good old fashioned way, proof. Not a before and after picture, the middle. Coaches lead by example, and I was not prioritizing the most important thing, me. So on January 8th, you announced that you were going to have this 1-year goal of losing 148 pounds to bring you to or 152?
148.
148. You had already lost 152. So you had lost 225.
Yep.
And then you had surgery.
Yep.
and had gained, I'm not good at math right now, so how much had you gained back from the initial 225?
Like 70, close to 80 pounds, 70 and change.
And this was all while you were doing Scaled Nation and you were out there and putting yourself out there as a coach.
Yep.
And people were seeing this weight gain, which kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, where, and I feel like this is something that all coaches can resonate with, where you feel like you have to maintain a certain level of fitness yourself to be to where people will listen to you, to feel like you have any authority, or you have to walk your own talk, you know? And I think that there is something to that, but also if this fitness is a lifelong endeavor, to expect yourself to never have a setback or a time where you're not able to prioritize your fitness and your nutrition the same way at all times, no matter what, you know? So you had this setback where you gained like 70 pounds back with a surgery. What was the surgery that you had?
They replaced both of my knees. So yeah, it was
some minor surgery.
It was they did so it was 2 total knee replacements, and then on one side, there's probably some pictures on my Instagram, but my leg used to bow. Like I used to get teased like from people. They thought I used to ride horses because the leg had a bow to it. And so it was kind of a double whammy on that side. So when they went in to do the total knee replacement, they also did the Blount's disease correction on that side to get rid of the bow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it all happened like it was back to back. So I did the first surgery,
2019. Okay.
So I go in, they do the hardest one first because they were like, this one's going to take longer to recover from. And that one happened in April. And then I was back in June for the Blount's correction. And then I was back in September again for the third one. So it was boom, boom, boom.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so so you had been down 225. How, can I ask you if you remember, if you even know, how long between initially hitting that 225 pound milestone and when you were back up the 70 pounds or whatever, how long was that process in between those two things?
Like 2 years, 2.5 years.
And then you were up for how long were you at the heavier, like the 70 pounds more weight? This year you were like, no, I want to lose it, go back.
Yeah, it was about 3 years. But the funny thing is during that 3 years, like, oh gosh, I was all over the board. Like I'd lost the surgery weight 3 times. 3. And it was just like this constant, I just couldn't get it under control. It wasn't food necessarily that I was having problems getting under control. It was essentially, I think in simplicity, it was stress management. Food is just something that I do when I get stressed. I could not get my stress under control.
What was going on for you that was, I mean, obviously you were trying to get this Scaled Nation off the ground.
Well, part of it was just the stress of recovery. So that was the first major hurdle. It was a gross underestimation on my part. You know, again, the doctors are like, well, you're gonna be out for 12 weeks. You're gonna be going through PT. You're gonna be doing all these great things, and then you'll be on your own and back to normal. In my head, I'm sure that there's I'm so pissed off at myself because I was so naive. I was like, oh, I didn't do more research. Being fully responsible, I did not go into this. And maybe it was good that I didn't, because if I had known everything, I might not have done it. So I guess it could have been a double whammy there, but I grossly underestimated how long it was going to take to be quote unquote normal again. What I was not prepared for is, right before I went out on surgery, like I was hitting PRs in my deadlifts. We were over 300 pounds on deadlifts. We were doing all these great strength things. What I didn't know was when they said, you're going to be starting at ground zero. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know that I was going to come back to CrossFit and have to learn just how to step up to a 25-pound plate again. Yeah. I was going to have to learn everything over again. It's like starting from scratch. Mm-hmm. So that was the first year and a half. I was literally like feeling sorry for myself.
Of course.
And then after that, I think it was more like, once you, yes, to your point earlier, trying to figure out how to articulate this. Once you establish yourself as, the person that lost 225 pounds, it's like you have that, whether you do it to yourself or it's unintentional or however it happens, there's this layer of pressure there, mm-hmm. whether you wanted it or not. You become the example. And so maybe I didn't have all these thousands of eyes watching every move I made, but I felt like they were. And suddenly it created pressure that wasn't there before. And it stressed me out.
Oh yeah. And then you start doing it. I don't know exactly what you were doing during this time period, but this is something that I've seen other people do, or even myself. You start doing things that aren't smart for the long-term goals that you have or the lifestyle that you're trying to achieve. You're trying to do take more drastic measures to regain some sort of sense of control and get back to where you were. And we see this all the time. We have a lot of moms in our communities, women who have babies. We see this all the time with the bounce back pressure that people feel. And I think, another way that sometimes doctors or PTs or whatever there can be a disservice. Again, this is not all doctors or PTs, but where it's like, oh, this is the timeline. This is what it looks like, assuming that it will look that way for every single person, where we all have different bodies and different lives and different everything, where it's not like, okay, week 1 is going to be this and week 2 is going to be that. And in your recovery from a baby or a knee surgery or whatever, it's like, well, in general, this is kind of like what we try to achieve, but everybody's different. It could take one person 2 months. It could take another person 2 years to get to the same place, and just to get people more into a mindset of let go and let it be what it's going to be. I think all of us and I am like this tenfold, where give me a plan. I will follow it exactly, but I want to know exactly what the outcome's going to be. And I'm really good at following instructions, but I also want to know what are we doing here? And if I follow this, what's going to happen? And so that totally makes sense. And then you get so frustrated, and then you're like, it's not working. I got to do something more. And then you're just more stressed out. And so I can see where the knee surgery and feeling like you have eyes on you, because I've, have had 3 babies with a lot of eyes on me, can completely understand that mindset.
I wanted to bounce back, and I didn't. Mm-hmm. One of the toughest things that I've had to it was hard. The recovery was just what a disaster challenge, and didn't come back as quickly as I would have liked. And then I think it just starts spiraling from there, I didn't want to go to any CrossFit events. I didn't want anybody to see me. I didn't want to, I can't have people seeing me like this, I knew that the weight was starting to come back on. And it was just the more pressure, the more, every pound created that much more pressure, and it just starts spiraling from there.
So January 8th of this year, you announced that for the next 365 days, for the next year, your goal was to lose 148 pounds.
Yep.
What was it that you were like, nope, I'm going to make a public, because you already have all this pressure that you're just talking about. So it seems like maybe making a public statement of, well, here's what I'm going to do, and here's how long it's going to take. And seems like it could be making it worse. What was but there are benefits of that, and putting it out there to hold yourself accountable. And I have a cool quote from you about accountability, but where did you get to before this January announcement that made you feel ready to put even more pressure on yourself?
I think during that time, I think it was very easy for me to put it on a lot of different things. I was like, well, it was surgeries, it was this, my hormones. They had me on antibiotics for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
I kept wondering, like, what is this doing to my body? I think I spent a lot of time focused on all this other stuff, and it was very easy for me to put blame on all these. It's because of this. It's because of this. It's because of this. And I think like during that Christmas break, November to December, when I'm sitting down, I'm doing my goal books. It was, I think it was a very bitter pill, very bitter reality check and honest conversation with myself about like, all of these things matter and all of these things can contribute. But where is the accountability for your contribution?
Mm.
And then
go ahead, say what you're going to say.
I mean, that's it. It was like, what are you doing? What are you personally, Athena, doing that's contributing to where you're at?
Like, are you actually controlling the things that you can control instead of focusing on the things that you can't?
Correct. Yeah.
So I took, this is another quote straight from your Instagram. And again, if you guys don't follow Athena, she's her captions are always really awesome. This I think was on a January 8th or 9th post. And you said, we each need something different. Some of us just need a pat on the back. Some of us are deeply triggered by accountability. I know I have struggled over the last few years because of my own complacency, some digging in of the heels because of my own ego and pride. Someone said to me, some people just need a good swift kick in the ass. And I didn't like it until I realized last night that person was me. And so I wanted to ask you, because accountability is a huge part of our community, especially because most of these people are working out alone and nobody's going to say anything to them if they don't work out. And so we have to be very like, personal accountability is so huge for the success for street parking members. But just for people in general, what is it about accountability that you think is so triggering for people?
I mean, people don't like getting called out when they know that they're not doing either what they know they should be doing or what they said they were going to do. Nobody likes getting called out. That's really all it boils down to. Like, well, there was a reason, or this happened, or, like we try to justify everything. Nobody wants to say, you know what? I was just being lazy. I literally did not want to do it. I did not want to wake up at 5 a.m. I mean, some of this is just so simple, but it's just that simple. I didn't want to. Nobody says I don't want to. They always, because if we say we don't want to, then we're responsible. Whereas
it's kind of like when people say, instead of saying I don't have time, it's saying I don't make time for this thing, for that thing. And it could be anything. It could be fitness or anything else that we're trying to make a habit in our lives.
Right.
And just that simple word shift plays back on you. And I really think that in any realm, people who are very successful versus people who tend to really struggle is being able to hear that. And always the inclination is going to be to want to defend ourselves. I don't think that for me personally, I don't think that ever entirely goes away. But if you become a person who wants to hear that from people you trust, not from random people on the internet because they don't know you, but people you trust, whether it's a coach or close friends or people that truly know you, know what you are capable of, know what your goals are and want the best for you. If you actually seek out the like, hey, tell me when I'm not doing what I said I was going to do. Tell me when you see me not putting in the effort that you know that I'm capable of. Most people won't ask for that type of feedback because they don't really want it or they're not really ready for it. But if you can get to a place where you have a few people like that in your life, man, it is like the biggest game changer for anything you're trying to achieve.
It is. It is. And I think part of it too was probably, like my own ego. I'm like, well, Athena, you're a coach too. Like there's like, how to do all this stuff already, like, why do you need somebody to tell you what you need to be doing? You already know. And then there's that part of it where, like I have to admit to myself, I need help too. Like
it can be as simple as like a buddy, right? Like I know Molly, who's our nutrition coach for street parking. If I am in a place where I'm like, I know I'm not really pushing as hard as I could in the workouts, all it takes for me is to be like, Molly, which version of the workout should I do today? And she's going to say the last thing that I want to hear. But it does take me to have that step of like asking, and what you're asking for, like what you're gonna get. And it doesn't always have to be like a coach. It could just be like a group of friends on a group chat or whatever, and just somebody that knows what you're doing, knows what your goals are, and it's not gonna hold any
So this, like, I laugh because I'm like, oh man, the first week I started working with you, first 2 weeks, right? I'm sending over okay, here's what I think I'm going to do. I'll send it over. And then I start getting all these modifications back. And I don't remember which day it was, but one of them was like, I think at the end of this workout, we're going to do like, we're going to add 15 minutes on the bike. We're going to do this and this. And it was then that I realized it was like, aha. So, okay. I know every time I send it, like it could come back completely revised and completely modified. I'm like, no, Athena, you're not going to do 15s. You're going to do 30s. I'm like, oh, all right. That's what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's exactly like, because if I wasn't doing that, then it's like, what am I even here for? Right. Do you think before we move on from the accountability things, I still have so many more notes, but, I think, and I would love to hear your experience that you've had, that you are very triggering to people. You're like a trigger for a larger body. Have you experienced that where you're that mirror of like, I'm going to take accountability. I'm not going to blame it on the antibiotics completely, or I'm not going to blame it on this is, what I've struggled with since birth. And I'm going to go out and do everything I possibly can. And I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to show the story. Have you found, like, and I know the answer to this because I watch your stories, not as much anymore because I'm not on social as much. You get the messages of people that are like angry.
Oh yeah.
For holding up that mirror and yeah. Talk about that a little bit.
I mean, I don't think there's anything I haven't heard. And some of my favorite things are, that somehow I'm contributing to diet culture, like I'm going against the pack, so to speak, like Athena, you're a larger body. You understand. Why would you be out advocating for weight loss? I feel like some of these social movements, and I won't name any of them, but some of them have just gone so completely off the charts where it's like, if you tell people that you're losing weight, automatically they're like, but why?
Don't you love yourself? Like you're perfect the way you are, like that whole thing.
Oh yeah. You clearly do not love yourself and you're not comfortable with yourself, or you wouldn't even want to lose weight. I mean, I hear it all. And I would say the worst criticism comes from other larger body people.
Because of that. Because of that mirror. I read something earlier today on Instagram where it says like an entrepreneur will never make fun of you or look down on you for wanting to start a business.
I remember that.
A millionaire will never, a millionaire will never look at you for trying to do certain investments. A fit person will never look down on you for trying to get healthier. It's the people well, that is a lie. And probably but you know what I'm saying? Like, people who are in it and they're also accountable for themselves are never going to look at somebody trying to improve their own life. I think is what it was trying to get at. It's the people that don't want that mirror of like, well, if she can do it early, I have no excuses. And I don't like that. I don't like that she's showing me that I don't have any excuses.
It's the confrontation part of it. I think, that I think the very first day that I announced that I was going to, here was the goal for the year, followers are funny and they'll unfollow you for all kinds of reasons, but they also have no problem telling you, like they'll announce it like they're at the train stop.
They want to say goodbye.
I'm following you because of this, goodbye. That I ever knew them anyway. But the very first day that the announcement came that I was going to do this and I made this decision, it started, I'm unfollowing you because, like I thought you were one of us. One of you? Like, what does that even mean? Like, wow. I never thought that I would lose followers because I was trying to get healthy. I was like, oh, that's right. I just don't get any of it.
Especially because you were already a coach. It's not like
I'm like, I've advocated from this from the very beginning. Like somehow I think initially, when I started this course working with larger bodies, I think some of these assumptions from my own followers were just that, like assumptions. They assumed what the course was about, and it's not. Like, no, like I'm trying to teach coaches how to add more of this demographic and be confident in doing it. Not like, why would I not encourage somebody to get healthy if they said, hey, the reason why I'm doing this is so that I can walk up a flight of stairs? Why would I not encourage that?
Right.
But that's the world that we're living in. If I even encourage weight loss in any way, shape, or form, I'm one of them. I'm one of the fitness influencers trying to encourage diet culture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hear it all.
I know. I've seen it. I've seen it posted. Another thing that I noticed when I was looking at all your posts, and I don't think I had known this before today when I was like really just creeping on you hard, on your chalkboard where you keep track of your progress and all of that, the 2024 word of the year is consistency, which obviously street parking we love because that's like our whole thing. It's like everything is why it's like, hey, if you're trying to be consistent, you should probably have a way to work out at home because you're not always going to get to the gym. And so consistency is a huge part of our culture. And we talk about, you said CrossFit works, but my constant inconsistency is what isn't working in another post. So how do you define, if somebody said, well, what do you mean by consistency? Like, how do you define that?
Well, I think all of us can define it a little differently, but for me, it was, okay, I said that I was going to do this. I was going to work out this many days a week, and this was the way I was going to eat. And consistency means that I'm giving it my 100% best effort to doing what I said I was going to do on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes legit life happens, like sometimes I'll get sent out into the field and I'll have to drive around Minnesota and do things like I literally couldn't get to the workout and it was 11 o'clock. Every now and then that happens. That's not, if I couldn't get to that on a particular day, that's not what I mean by not being consistent. It's when I physically wake up and say, you know what, I don't feel like doing it today. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean.
Yeah. And I think that's so great too, because one of the things that we battle and we've really tried to teach in our community, and something that has always been very important to me, even when I was working for CrossFit, is it's like doing something. One of our big hashtags here is more than nothing, right? Doing something is going to get you further down the road than saying, well, I can't do what I had planned today, or I know I'm not going to be able to use the weight that I would normally use for this workout, or I don't have my trusty barbell because I'm at a hotel. So I'm just not going to do it. Like, I'm just not going to work out. Call it a wash because I can't do parts A, B, and C of this program that I'm following. So whatever.
Yeah.
And so I love what you're saying, where it's the 100% in the day that you're in. So I only slept 4 hours last night, and I'm at a hotel, and my eating has been off. A lot of people would say, I'm just not going to work out today. The people that can say, well, I'm not going to be able to do what I wanted to do or even hit it at the intensity that I wanted to hit it, but I could do some like air squats and push-ups in my hotel room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those people, that mindset is where consistency is how like we would look at it.
It's like doing that little something every day. Like it's not always going to look the same. It's not going to always have the same outcome. Like I have a, goal to do an hour LSD every day. Sometimes it has been like a 10-minute walk and that's all I had time to do that day. It was getting dark. I'm like 10 minutes a day. Like, well, I have 10 minutes a day. Like I can do something.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back to then the accountability piece, which you also have to say like, we almost had to like course correct in our community because More Than Nothing was such a thing that people were abusing it. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like, oh, whatever, More Than Nothing. And it's like, but why? Like you are home, you have all your equipment. Why did you approach your workout like that instead of pushing yourself or instead of challenging yourself to do?
Oh, I never thought of that, but yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we had to like course correct. And it was like, we always say that More Than Nothing is a fail safe. It's not the program. The program for us, again, like I'm such like a tagline person, but the program is this idea of like, we keep it very simple, but it's not supposed to be easy. But if you need to, you can also say, well, I just got to do more.
It's supposed to be a fallback. It's not supposed to.
It's a fallback plan. It's not the plan.
Something's better than nothing. Ta-da!
Yeah, for like months on end. It's like, no. That's not what we're after. So just really quickly, because not really quickly, but so in January, what was your initial plan then? And I know you were working with Hiller, who he's been out here with us before, and some people might know who he is and some people might not. That's okay. He's a well-known like YouTuber in the CrossFit space who is very outspoken and also I love him because he just calls it how he sees it. No BS. All about accountability and keeping it real. So that's great. You were working with him at first. What was your plan initially as far as like how many workouts a week and all of that?
Well, when I was working with Hiller, I didn't really have a set amount of anything. It was literally like, I'm going to do whatever it is you tell me to do.
And he was working with you on the fitness and nutrition, like all of it. It was just him. Because I know that's changed and I want to talk about that.
Yes. Initially, that was the plan. Yes, he would all the workouts, the programming, the nutritional aspects, and whatever it was that he recommended or suggested, that was going to be it.
And you guys, you had like a lot of really good success with it. Like you were, yeah. And then in March, he let you know, like, hey, I'm busy. He started traveling around a lot to do a lot of the, his YouTube stuff and everything. So he kind of let you know, like, I'm not going to be able to take all of this on. And right. So you had put up a post where you were kind of homeless
yeah.
for a moment. And what you had decided was, instead of having just one person, why don't I gain support in it's three separate areas, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about what those three separate areas are and how you came to think of those three things as, well, I know I need these three pillars?
Okay. Part of that idea was because of what I learned working with Hiller. And it wasn't anything he was doing wrong. It had more to do with when the opportunity presented itself where I was homeless for a while and I got the opportunity to kind of redesign the program. It was like, understanding the beginning of the year, it was different. It was kind of a Hail Mary. I didn't actually think, essentially what I was doing was I was calling him out.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, you can do all these things. You say you can do all these things. Okay, well, put your money where your mouth is.
Oh, no.
So when the opportunity kind of presented itself to reconstruct the program, I had to think back on that 8 weeks and like be critical. What was working and what wasn't. And I think one of the where me and Hiller differ so much is the mindset piece. Hiller, for example, has never used food for comfort. So
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't, again, not his fault. That's something that he would never be able to identify with. If there was ever a time where I said, hey, I caved, or I got stressed this weekend, would he be able to understand, like, okay, and I questioned that.
Okay.
So it was like, the other part of it is that when you're on a journey like this, mindset is like 90% of it.
Yes.
90%. It's all a head game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the piece that I didn't lean on Hiller for, because I knew that he didn't have the capacity, but it was what I wasn't getting, if that makes any sense. I needed it. I needed
Mm-hmm.
help with that. Sometimes it could be something simple as, hey, Athena, I know this is probably what you want, or your birthday's coming up, and I know you're probably going to have some inclination to eat a whole carrot cake, but hey, let's think about something else. Or, you know what I mean? Just the stupid stuff that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like you're not included. I mean, being in the deficit 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, it's taxing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hold on. You're like, oh,
but
there
then
we
the other, so, okay, I know, I was like,
like 1 second, but you're back.
the other part to that was when Hiller sent me that text, like, I was devastated,
Mm-hmm.
Legit. And because I loved what I was learning. I loved the fact that I was learning from somebody that I never thought I would learn shit from. And I loved that. But also, to me, it's like when you're on a journey like this, like, the whole piece about managing stress meant that I needed to keep the disruptions to a minimum.
Mm.
That's how I'm going to keep my stress level low this year. So if you were to lose a coach and you depend on that coach for everything, it's going to rock your world, And it was a chance that I didn't want to take a second time. So I thought, what if I separate them out into the 3 veins? We have movement, we have nutrition or fuel, right? Because fuel is a lot of different things. And then we have, that God and mindset piece. That piece that's super critical in Athena's life.
And I think I think that's really smart. And I think, not everybody's going to have the ability to hire 3 separate people or have the time to meet with 3 separate people. I don't know how often you talk to your fuel. Who are the other 2 coaches? Do you want to give them a shout out?
So, Carolyn Lambre is the fuel coach. She's Jeff Adler's coach out of Montreal, CrossFit Wonderland. And then my mindset coach, I call him my God guy, is Gordon Lake. He is at CrossFit SVL in South Carolina. He's also CrossFit Southeast affiliate rep. Woo, I got it. Look at that. Yeah.
Awesome.
So those are the other 2.
And I think, so for people that are like, well, that's nice for you, Athena, that you have these 3, Jeff Adler's freaking nutrition lady, and you got Miranda over here from Street Parking, and you got, tell me that Gordon. You got Gordon over here, and they're just on your phone, and that's awesome. But I don't think it doesn't need to be that, but recognizing that it's not just movement. It's like, okay, I just need to figure out what program I'm going to do. Or it's not just nutrition. Okay, I need to figure out which diet I'm going to follow. It's these 3 things have to come together. So it could be that you've got a nutrition plan and you've got a workout plan. But I think the one that people are missing the most, like you're saying, is mindset. And I love that you called Gordon your God guide. And this is something that we've talked about. Not everybody is comfortable with a God guy because they might have certain feelings around God and all of that. And so that's fine. But you got to find something that resonates with you and that talks to your depths of your soul, where for some people that's, I don't know, might be something on the more spiritual, but out there, it's not one specific person, or it might be some specific motivational speaker, or, you know, you're like a Brene Brown person, whatever, like
Yeah.
find something that speaks to you and that hits on something deeper than a weight loss goal or an aesthetic goal, or even a goal of something that you're going to be able to do, that hits deeper for you. And for you, that is God, and you found somebody that can speak to you in that language. And I think that's really important.
Right. I wanted to make sure that I think it could be perceived as, because I always worry about what people think of me too. And I don't, you know, I think everybody does. And I didn't want this year to be something where people would look at it and say, you know, this is all for very selfish motivation, or you're doing this for the attention, or I wanted to make sure that I was doing this in a way that still honored that faith that I hold really, really valuable to me. Am I doing this in a way that's going to honor God, and I'm going to be able to help people in a way that you would want me to?
Yeah. And I think that's beautiful. And I think many people who have found consistency in their health and fitness, we all see people around us that are these incredible, amazing people who just haven't been able to get that piece of their life together. And we see these people and it's like, I want to help you and I want to know how to help you. And your seminar does so much for that. Hopefully that's what we're trying to do over here at Street Parking, is give people these tools. And you sharing your story is not from a place of like, and I truly believe this, is not from a place of like, look at me and make me famous and look what I can do. It's like, let me be a light and show you. And I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to get the nasty, mean DMs and the complainers and I'm unfollowing you people. And I'm going to take that on to show and hopefully be a beacon of hope for other people. And I can see that from you. And I think it's awesome. And it's beautiful. So
my goal is like, I don't want people to have some of that hopelessness that I had felt. I didn't know that. It's like what you guys always say in Street Parking. And one of the things that I've grown to appreciate so much, you always say it's I'm going to mess it up. It's simple. I'm going to mess it up. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. You nailed it.
And I was like, please don't let me mess this up because it's super simple. I don't want people to have to struggle that way, but I also don't want coaches, because I love CrossFit so much and I love being a coach, as we just kept seeing the same problems over and over again. It's like, let me help you so this doesn't repeat itself with somebody that comes in that desperately needs your help.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like maybe it does matter, you know, because I was there my whole life. I know everything that they're feeling. Like half the stuff that went into this seminar and the class, although it came from all those people that participated, there wasn't a single thing that didn't resonate with me, because it happened at one point or another. Or, yep, I've experienced that, or I haven't experienced exactly this aspect, but something very similar. You know, it's like, it's something that we can all resonate with. So it's just it is personal.
Yeah.
Because I want CrossFit to be that place for them as well.
Yeah. Well, here's what we're going to do. Because I still have like notes and notes. So we're going to have to do another episode, because I've kept you here for an hour and a half. And I don't want to gloss over some of this other stuff, because I wanted to ask you about your nutrition. I wanted to ask you about how your goals have changed. We had a good conversation where I was concerned about how you had this very specific weight loss number and what that does to you mentally, and how that can like really make it hard to not start making weird decisions. And I want to talk about all that stuff. So I don't want to gloss over it. So I'm going to keep these notes and make sure.
Just so you know, because I talked to Carolyn about this on one of her coaches' check-ins, but you and her actually had the same exact concerns for the same exact reason. that you both expressed. Athena, like, what's going to happen if you don't hit that number?
It's 143 pounds instead of 148 pounds. Yeah.
And what's funny is that I've been there before. And, the first year when I said I'm going to lose 200 pounds this year seemed ungodly. But at the end of that first year, I got to 187. And you would think after losing 187 that very first year that it would have been like the most phenomenal, fantastic thing that's ever happened in my life. No, like my world fell apart and it was horrible. And like, it was almost like for about 3 months there, I literally threw up my hands and I'm like, F this.
And I told you
like 13 pounds,
And I told you on the phone, I remember saying, because we were talking about, how you had Gordon and God, and that was like a big part of it for you. And I said, you know what? And I think that this is me speaking for God. So just maybe it's offensive. I don't know. But I think that God was like, no. You don't get to decide exactly how much weight you're going to lose and on what date you're going to lose it. And how is that helpful to other people? Because that's not real life and that's not how it works. And you don't get to control everything. And we talked about how it actually would have made you less helpful to people if you had this like seamless, oh yeah, I said I was going to lose 200 pounds and I lost 200 pounds exactly on this exact day. And look how like smooth it all went. And it's like, that's not actually helpful for anyone. Because it's not realistic, and it's just so I love that part of that she asked you that too. And so I want to do another episode soon where we can talk about, but before we go off of this one, where are you at right now? How much weight have you lost? Mm-hmm. And just so you guys know, in the future episode, I will ask Athena about non-scale victories, because it's not just all about the number on the scale. She doesn't believe that. I don't believe that. I'm sure your other two coaches don't believe that. That's not what you're trying to say. So we will get into that. We're not going to talk about it right now. But because, we've been talking about your weight loss goal and everything, where are you at right now? Because you're about halfway through the year, a little bit further.
I just hit halfway on July 15th. So that was the 6-month mark. And today I'm at 75 and a half.
Awesome.
So it's just shy of halfway.
Cool. And we are doing a workout together on Friday. Yes. So because you've been doing the vault, I've got you doing round 2 of the vault, which you're retesting a lot of them. But we also have the team version of all these workouts. So you and I are going to do a live team version of, I believe it's the Black Pearl, which we've got like rowing and squats. And we're going to do it together on Friday. So I hope you guys all hop on. It'll be live on the Street Parking YouTube channel, and I think on our Instagram as well. And so you guys can watch Athena and I attack this team workout, because one of the things with having an online community is that we try to show that you don't actually have to be together in person to work out together. And so we'll do a little workout together, and we hope that you guys join us for that. And I can't wait.
I'm looking forward to it. Is that it? Just squats and rowing?
Yes.
Easy peasy.
All right. Yeah, no problem. Simple. It's so simple. I can do that. Here we go. You already said it.
I got this in bed.
Setting yourself up once again. But yeah, so on the next episode, guys, we'll talk about like more of the like nitty-gritty of like what Athena's actually doing, like what her workout schedule looks like, what kind of nutrition, because I know people want to know that stuff. Today we talked more about the mindset and what's underneath the hood, but it's like, okay, but like what actually, how can I look at what she's doing and try to template it over or get an example of what I might be able to do? And because you're doing some extra movement, you're not just doing the street parking workouts. So I want to talk about that stuff and want to talk about how we've progressed through some of those things. Like recently, how I had you add a ruck to some of your walks. And so we'll talk through the more nerdy programming type stuff on the next episode. But you're just awesome. I knew that this episode was going to be really long, and I can't wait to have you on again. And can you just tell people your website and any social media stuff so that they can look into all of that?
Yeah. Instagram is kind of like my little stomping grounds. You can find me over there. My username is Athena Marie, B as in bean, and then a T. If you go to my website, it's athenaMperez.com, or you can visit and get more information on the seminar that Miranda was talking about at scalednation.com.
Last question. Why is your nickname Bean?
Well, it started the day my parents brought me home from the hospital. I was premature, so they said, "Oh, you look like a little tiny bean."
Oh,
Bean had an evolution, like when I started gaining weight when I was young. It went from bean to like teeny bean, and then it went to teeny tank for a while. And then right about the time I was like 8 or 9, it just got shortened to it's been bean. So it's weird at home. My brothers, my parents, everybody calls me Bean. And I hated it when I was young. And then of course, when I got older, I was learning to embrace it, but it was really when the nieces and nephews, now we're all older, the brothers start having children, and now the kids are saying Auntie Bean. And then from there, it just was like,
now you have to have it.
now I have to have it. It's like, now it's just Bean. And so it just stuck.
My oldest, when we brought him home from the hospital, he was very hairy, Knox. And so we call him Mono or Monito for like monkey or little monkey. And he's 7 now, and it's still all we refer to him as is Mono. So,
oh, that's cute. See, you'll have that name forever.
He definitely will. Okay. So we'll see you guys on Friday. I'll see you on Friday, and then we'll plan for episode number 2 where we dive into all of the details of all that stuff. Thank you.
You got it.
Okay.
See everybody on Friday.
Okay. Bye.